Sora. Masahiro Sakurai on creating games. Hello there, Masahiro Sakurai here. It's time to start the final video. You think I look older than I did in my other videos? That's to be expected. Until recently, all the footage of me for this channel was recorded 2.5 years ago. Preface. This video will serve as a final wrap-up for Masahiro Sakurai on creating games. I'm including it in the game concepts category as I'll be discussing how exactly the channel was made. As for why I made it, I already went over that in my very first video about this channel, which you're welcome to revisit. I'll be covering things in order, starting with the context in which production began. Please enjoy this final episode, which you can think of as Masahiro Sakurai on creating a YouTube channel. A limited opportunity. It was around July of 2021. I was busy working on the DLC for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. To be precise, I was putting together the video for Mr. Sakurai Presents Kazuya. Sora was in development too, of course. Oh, and by Sora I mean the fighter. Not that company you may have heard of. While I was busy working on those tasks, I received a request to write a game proposal which I finished at lightning speed. I'm sorry I can't share more about this project, but assuming we're able to get it made, it should be announced sooner or later. Then in late October of 2021, Sora was released, and my work commitments were more or less wrapped up. There was, of course, that new game proposal I had written. I'd been given the okay to move forward with production, but it was going to take some time to assemble the right team. The target timeframe was April 2022. Until then, I would have to wait. Up to this point, I'd always gone directly from one job to the next. Directors tend to stay involved in projects longer than anyone else. As one job approaches the finish line, you'll often be getting ready for the next one, so you never get to rest. Yet, after all these years, by some miracle, my schedule was wide open for several months straight. My next job was decided and I was done getting ready for it. But the team hadn't been assembled yet, leading to this longer than usual gap. What a lucky break! It was time for some fun! Maybe a trip around the world? Well, I can't do that because of Fukurashi. Recently, she started getting really lonely whenever I go out. Still, I finally had some time off. I could have used it to recharge, but I felt as though this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I ended up using that time to plan out this very YouTube channel. It's hard to know where life may take you next. I'm getting old enough to start considering retirement at some point, and there's no telling what else might happen, adversity included. Thus, I decided to do what needs doing while I still have the opportunity. Passing on knowledge. Now, what were my aims in making this channel, and in what context was it created? Let's turn back the clock. The year was 2003. I had gone freelance, having left HAL Laboratory where I created Kirby and Super Smash Bros. And I was of the opinion that I didn't need to be making games myself. To be honest, the games I make aren't necessarily the kind of games I want to play. That's why I created Kirby for beginners, despite being a proficient gamer myself, and why I later created Meteos, despite my lack of skill at puzzle games. To put it simply, the reason I'm involved in making games is because that's what I'm suited for. And rather than stick around the same work environment forever, I felt that teaming up with all sorts of people would bring about a greater benefit for the game industry. By exchanging our knowledge and experience, I thought we could broaden the industry's future potential, even if only by a little. Personally speaking, designing and directing games was a low priority. But what I really wanted to do was think about the industry as a whole. As a result, I spent some time exclusively doing supervision work right after I went freelance. Things like looking at titles in development and explaining how I thought they could be improved. However, it was hard to determine how much of an impact that work really had on those teams and developers' futures. If all I was going to do was consult, it felt like I'd have a greater impact by making a game myself to show how it's done, though there was no way of knowing for sure. I was also often asked to do things like give lectures at game development schools, but this wasn't very efficient. I'd spend a lot of time prepping materials and traveling for a one-off event, one that would reach a few hundred people at best. And if the students or other audience members weren't interested in learning, there'd be no point. Conferences naturally have the same kind of drawbacks. As I touched on in my very first video, game design is hard to put into clear terms. I have released a fair number of books in Japanese, but I can't expect too many people to read them. I tried all sorts of different things, but they each had their own shortcomings. It made me wonder, how exactly can I contribute to this massive game industry? How can I pass on the knowledge I've learned over the years to as many people as possible? I thought about that for a long time. In the end, I decided to make this channel a lasting archive of information for people to access whenever they like. Scripts. Back to the creation of the channel itself. It was around November of 2021. For the moment, I was able to carve out some time to get the channel ready. To start, I began working on the scripts. This is a rather important part of the process. I probably could have ad-libbed it if I tried, but I might have lost track of what I was talking about in the middle of a sentence, or even veered entirely off topic. I needed to consider the overall balance of the content as well. Additionally, the scripts would be used for subtitling, translation, and various checks. I felt that no matter how you looked at it, it was crucial that preparing the scripts came first. That said, as you can tell, it's not like I'm just reading the words off a printed script. Or maybe it does come across that way. I guess I do tend to talk in a sort of emotionless manner. It's not good, I know. Here's how I wrote the scripts. First, I wrote a list of topics based on my old Famitsu columns and memories from my work in game development. Just simple one-line ideas. Most of these topics later ended up becoming video titles. I came up with a few hundred of them. Next, I sorted the topics into straightforward categories. I divided them into groups such as work ethic, game essence, graphics, and team management, and decided on a video count for each category. I did decide to remove some topics when reviewing as well. Then I got to work on writing scripts for each heading. As I've mentioned before, I use outlines to reorder, track, and organize all sorts of things. Then I went ahead and wrote every single script, excluding this final episode. In other words, the final count and content of all these videos was already decided from the very beginning of the channel. It was all planned out from start to finish. That's how I could tell you the channel would wrap up sometime this year, and how all the footage prior to this video was recorded over 2.5 years ago. Considering I'd never made a channel before, I set quite a challenge for myself doing it this way. As for why I wrote all the scripts at the start, it's because I would never have been able to work on both the channel and the game at the same time. If game development didn't take so much time out of my day, or if either the game or the channel were smaller in scale, it might have been possible, but that wasn't the case. If nothing else, I knew that for a director who produces games on the scale that I do, it would be a tall order to manage 2 projects at once. In order to increase my chances of success, I absolutely had to plan all the content in advance. And because it was all planned out from the very start, that meant I couldn't come up with new content based on viewer requests. I couldn't use comments or reactions to think up video topics or change course on things either. I had quite a few concerns, but I thought that as long as I stuck to the plan I'd made for myself, things might just work out. Probably. Now, back to the script writing. Time was limited, and I had a lot of scripts to write, so I couldn't afford to ruminate on every last detail. I just wrote. Looking back now, there are some places I could have said more, or others where I invited misunderstandings. But if I'd put too much effort into preventing that, I wouldn't have been able to convey things succinctly. Short and snappy, speed above all else, and I'd have to live with the results. This is the secret to a good presentation, too. By the way, I ended up preparing a total of 256 episodes. What a beautiful place to leave off at! But along the way, I added 3 Retro Game Master crossover episodes, bringing that number to 259. I couldn't have foreseen that. Including this final episode, the grand total comes to 260, not counting the category compilation videos. If you count up all the text across all the scripts, it amounts to about 300,000 Japanese characters. That may be difficult to conceptualize for those who don't speak Japanese. But I believe that's roughly the same amount of text as in Tactics Ogre Reborn. With that much text, even just rereading it all takes a lot of time. Correction and revision is tough. It took about a month to write everything, though I wasn't working exclusively on scripts that whole time. Simple math will tell you that's a pace of about 12 scripts a day. I also decided the order in which the videos would release. The categories and video counts were already set, so I just put them into an Excel sheet and arranged them into a nice even spread. This Excel file was then used as is to track our schedule and progress. So, with the scripts finished, I was ready to move on to recording. Recording. I recorded these videos at my secondary residence. I used it for Mr. Sakurai Presents Min Min and Steve and Alex as well. Same living room. This was my first time making a YouTube channel, and it was tough. I did all the recording by myself without a camera crew or anything. So I couldn't look at previews or check for mistakes, I just had to press on. By the way, I created a pilot version of the channel before I started actual recording, a test version in other words. I picked 3 episodes, Keeping Rewards in Sight, Praised the Player, and Jump Physics, that would later appear on the final channel, and recorded and edited them at Sora. This, of course, included video of me talking, but I even added game footage like in the final version. I did this to find out whether or not I could really make this channel. And the answer was, yes, I can do it. I then took the pilot to Nintendo and discussed it with them as well. I wanted to ensure I wasn't infringing on their game development interests, and I needed to get permission to use development footage from Smash Bros. Ultimate. They were naturally surprised, but they kindly promised to work with me. Not only did they do an initial check of the scripts, they also looked over the videos as necessary. Though, they almost never asked me to change things. Thank you for that. Now, back to recording. To start, I would only record at night and only when it wasn't raining. Recording during the day, even with the blinds down, had a very noticeable impact, resulting in footage that was too uneven. As for the rain, I wanted to avoid picking up the rain sounds. Since this was at my secondary residence, I'd drive over from my house in the early morning, record up to a few dozen videos all in one go, then head back home after midnight, day after day. After all, my simple math from when I wrote the scripts told me that even if I recorded 12 videos a day, it would still take an entire month. Considering my weather restrictions and the fact I couldn't spend too much time on this, I recorded as much as I possibly could. I started with the first episode from category A, then recorded the second, third, fourth, and so on. Once that category was done, I moved on to the next one. There was a lot for me to get through, of course, and I had to record on many different days to finish. At times, I'd also bring along belongings like books, figures, or even my family basic set. To record the footage, I used a basic compact digital camera, the Sony ZV-1. If I take a picture to show you what's in front of me now, this is what it looks like. In my episode about Fukurashi, it probably seemed like I was smiling much more than usual. But I was just talking to this little camera, same as always. For the audio, I tested out different options like pin mics and stand mics, but I ultimately settled on a directional mic. On my first day, I had a lot of energy and recorded about 30 episodes, but I'd pick up some kind of radio interference and couldn't use even a single minute of it. I was able to resolve this by attaching a ferrite core to the cable. A problem like this made for a discouraging start, and I had to trial and error my way through it alone. I also had to stop recording due to the noise whenever a motorcycle or ambulance passed by outside. This wasn't unique to the channel. It also happened when I recorded for things like Mr. Sakurai Presents and Yoiko's Smash Bros. Life. It's a pretty low-tech approach. I stuck with the recording night after exhausting night until all the footage was finally finished. Recording an entire YouTube channel in one go like that results in a huge amount of content, so it already felt like a great achievement. Incidentally, by the time the channel launched, I'd already sold the second home I recorded the footage in. Sad to say, I'll never be able to go back to that living room again. That's why I'm coming to you now from somewhere different. Channel preparations. With the filming complete, I proceeded to do a light edit of the footage I recorded of myself. There were some places I tripped over my words, couldn't remember what to say next, or had to stop because of noise from a passing motorcycle, so I trimmed out all those sections. Once the video contained only me talking, I could lock down the approximate length of each episode. After that, I revised the scripts I prepared to match the words I had actually said. These scripts would later be used for content checks, subtitles, and translation, so I wanted them to match all of my ad-libs and line changes. And with that, the scripts and videos for all my videos were finished. Then came my next task, recording a stockpile of game footage to tie into the topics of each episode. Of course, only I could record the development footage of Smash Bros. Ultimate that was used in so many episodes. There was a staggering 256 episodes planned, and just 1 or 2 pieces of footage for each wouldn't cut it. As an example, for my close-up look at Smash Bros. Stages, I captured over 200 pieces of footage. If you count the ones that didn't make the cut, it would probably be over 300. If, along the way, I'd captured something, like Sonic footage that would need Sega approvals for example, I ended up removing it in order to save everyone the extra trouble. Of course, I recorded plenty of games other than Smash Bros. As well. It's a good thing I have so many at home. I put the game library to good use to capture and stockpile a lot of footage. I already had an idea of which games I wanted footage for when I was writing the scripts. But that wasn't set in stone, and I sometimes changed course while I was capturing gameplay. My episodes are grouped into categories, and those categories turned out to be a massive help in keeping materials organized. I used the category letters and episode codes as is when naming the folders, and I just dropped the materials into each. As you can see, there was a big advantage to deciding all the episodes in advance. Next, I stored all the scripts, videos, and game footage in a database. And that was the bulk of my work for the channel. Getting all of this done before the team assembled for my game project starting in April was my top requirement. And with the fruits of my labor complete, I was finally ready to start working with outside parties. Editing, hike. We'd now entered a new year. It was the beginning of February 2022. For YouTube videos, I knew it would be lower impact and harder to grasp if it were just me talking at you. I would need to add game footage, of course, but also images, music, subtitles, and more. So I decided to ask a company called Hike to help with that. They were actually called Cubist at the time, but changed names during the channel's production. Coincidentally, I hear they've made things like promotional videos for past Nintendo titles as well. When I sent them an email about starting this channel, they were apparently a bit suspicious of whether or not it was actually me. This is a new venture for me, so I can't say it would be unwarranted. I'm sure it's rare for them to get requests like this from individuals, as opposed to companies, too. I then showed them the pilot I made and told them I was serious about the channel, and in the end they said they would love to do it. Once they'd made a pilot version of their own, it was clear they could handle it with no problems. The cost was a bit higher than I had anticipated, but we signed a contract and started production. You can see examples of their editing skill all over this channel. Things are easy to understand, and it's obvious how much work they put into it. As an example, the gestures I made at the start of each grab bag episode were something I came up with on the fly in recording. But Hike were the ones who picked up on my intent and came up with all the charming visuals. Without any instruction from me, of course. For something playful like this, it would have been strange if I had dictated every last detail to them. As for the production itself, I provided them with the videos of myself I had trimmed down, onto which they overlaid all sorts of different assets. Things like game footage, illustrations, graphics, wipes, subtitles, and more. For game footage, we were able to use the stockpile I had prepared previously, but that wasn't always enough. Even though I recorded my game footage a long time ago, there are plenty of newer titles on the channel as well, which were recorded later on in the process. I did take some of this footage myself, but Hike captured quite a lot of it too. This might all sound relatively easy since the length and structure of the videos was already decided, but it was still tough. There was so much to do. In the end, the part of creating the channel that took the longest was certainly the editing. Hike was also in charge of creating the thumbnails for each episode. As for music and sound effects, we used materials that Hike had licenses for. Though for the opening and ending jingles, I asked Mr. Yuzo Koshiro to make something for the channel. I wanted to get them just right and make sure we had the perfect fit. Translation 8.4. Next, this channel has both Japanese and English versions. The translation into English was handled by a company called 8.4. In Japan, they're a fairly well-known game localization company. While I did check over the English version a bit, I generally left things in their hands. When recording game footage, I would capture both Japanese and English versions whenever possible. But with older games in particular, I only often had access to the Japanese versions, so I couldn't get English footage. In such situations, 8.4 was sometimes able to provide game footage themselves along with the translation. I'm extremely grateful for that. Initially, I was thinking I would create this channel exclusively in Japanese. But since I was going through the effort, I was surely better off trying to reach as many people as possible. I have 8.4 to thank for being able to release those videos in English. Still, it once again fell to Hike to edit the translated content into the actual episodes. Given the extra effort and cost, I hope this helped this channel reach at least a few more people. The English channel has a smaller viewership than the Japanese one. Based on the English comments, I get the impression that there was occasional discrepancy or misunderstanding. But I'd say that overall everything came across naturally. 84 also translated the tweets and descriptions for each episode and more. Naturally, I provided the original text for all that. Once that was done and we'd stockpiled a number of episodes, the channel was ready for launch. The time had come. Life with an active channel. Then came August 24th, 2022. My YouTube channel, Masahiro Sakurai on Creating Games, finally launched. I had still been posting screenshots of the day on Twitter right up until the day before, which meant the transition to this new offering was nice and smooth. At the time, people were surprised to see an active game director starting up a channel of this scale. The game project I'd mentioned had already started production, so as I'd prepared for, I had to work on both ventures at once. Now, I'd like to share with you what a typical day looks like for me. At around 8 AM, I get out of bed and immediately write a daily report to my game's development team. At times, I'll also catch up on checks that came in the night before. I eat breakfast, get ready for the day, then start working on my game project. This primarily involves my normal duties as a game director, but I do all sorts of things. I'm usually very busy. I don't even have time for breaks. As those of you who have kept up with my videos on supervision can probably imagine, I check over a wide variety of details one after another in rapid succession. In any case, I don't have time during the day to work on the YouTube channel, so I focus exclusively on my game project. If I can get everything done on time, I finish at 6:30 PM. I try not to go too far over that since I have channel work to do as well, but I always finish my necessary tasks for the day before clocking out. I have dinner after that, then start working on this channel at 8 PM. That entails reviews and video posting. On posting days, I have to jump from my day job straight into the work on the channel, so it's very hectic. This is why I've settled into a rhythm of posting to the channel at 8 PM Japan time. This may not have been an ideal time for those of you overseas, but that's just when it had to be. Each post requires plenty of back-end work after all. I also prepare the screenshots that accompany my tweets for each episode, and put together the end cards. In addition to all that, I have video deliveries to review just about every single day. Hike sends me videos and thumbnails, which I then give feedback on. They tend to be working on multiple videos at once, so on heavy days I might have 4 or 5 to check. We made a rule that if Hike wanted something reviewed that day, they had to get it to me by 8 PM. Generally speaking, I try to get through everything on my plate within the same day. I don't let things spill into the next day. Any review requests I receive on a given day, I resolve that day, no matter how busy I am. Putting them off is just asking for trouble. At the beginning, though, these emails would come in around 11 PM, and I was running myself into the ground from lack of sleep. Things would never work if I started my reviews that late, which is why we made the rule to have things in my inbox by 8 PM. In most cases, the videos and thumbnails I received from Hike aren't immediately ready to go. Sometimes things aren't as I pictured, or I need them to fix an inconsistency, or something that was difficult to understand. Taking thumbnails and videos into account, each episode gets about 6 to 8 rounds of feedback. It's done over email as bullet points of things that need addressing. If I determine during my review that we need a new game footage for a video, I take out my capture hardware, record the footage, and provide it to Hike. It really is fortunate I have so many games. Including Smash Bros. Ultimate, of course, I always try to find titles that best fit the point I'm making. There are countless games used as examples throughout this channel, and that footage was almost entirely captured by either myself or Hike. We don't take the videos from elsewhere. It was a lot of work. In most cases, even simple footage requires making multiple retakes. I also can't always use the examples I want since I don't have the hardware for some games. That's why there were so few PC titles in my video about 1986, for example. I wanted to feature more, but it is what it is, sadly. Separate from all of that, sometimes a game will come out that better fits a video than the one I captured in my prep phase, in which case I'll go back and capture that instead and swap the new footage in. And since the scripts were written so long ago, at times I have to go back and tweak what I'm saying. Maybe a situation changed, or some footage wasn't suitable. However, I only added or replaced voiceover as an absolute last resort. I was recording in a different environment, so new voiceover would sound significantly different. There's no easy way to avoid that issue, so I almost never ended up changing the voiceover. I do occasionally have days without any videos to review, but if you factor in video editing, I still sometimes work past 11 PM. Finally, I'll do some work for my company, Sora, then bring my days to a close. If I have the time, I'll play games or exercise, and then I take a bath. I then head to bed between 1 and 2 in the morning. There, I read comics or magazines on my tablet until I fall asleep. I usually get about 6 hours of sleep. That's how I spent just about every day, but since my free time was dependent on how much I had to review, it was a little difficult to establish any kind of regular schedule, all for the sake of this channel. I couldn't go out on upload days while reviews and other work would cut into my free evening hours, which meant less exercise, less gaming, less seeing other people, and just less time in general. When the channel launched, I was uploading 3 videos every week. That ended up being pretty grueling though, so I cut it down to 2 a week. Still, I often found myself wondering how I was managing to keep up. By the way, each video took about 3 months from start to finish. While I always strove to make the videos bite-sized, these things still took a lot of time and effort. At times, I felt like this production schedule was far too demanding. I was already extremely busy with regular work, and this was all on top of that. But I kept it going for more than 2 years. 3 if you count the initial prep work. Channel reception. Despite all the hard work that went into it, I only had a vague understanding of how the channel was actually received. I knew going in that it wouldn't produce verifiable results. The only way for me to gauge what viewers think is through the comments section. When those comments have nothing to do with the topic of the video or they're just poking fun, it's surprisingly discouraging. I take it to mean that the subject matter didn't get through to that person. Though I suppose it's proof the channel reached a wide variety of viewers. People who had no ties to game dev tuned in, as did those who just wanted to have fun. And by gaining a deeper understanding of how games are made, it's possible those people will see them in a better light. Well, I may just be tricking myself into believing that. Still, there is plenty of people who heard everything I had to say, of course. Some of you are probably already applying the techniques you've learned, I think. I hope. I've also heard directly from different game companies and developers who told me the channel was helpful. It even managed to win some awards. 2 top prizes at the 2023 CEDEC Awards, actually. I'm happy to have something tangible to mark the achievement. Most of all, and this is important, my videos get lots of likes. This isn't public-facing data. but almost all the videos in both Japanese and English had 99.5% likes or more. These are the only concrete numbers I was able to get, and they really helped sustain me. Thank you to all the viewers who decided to push that like button. I went through a lot of trouble making this channel, so I'd like to believe it had a positive impact and inspired people to think more about games. And that's all I have to say about production. Production costs. So, how much did it cost to create the channel, manage, and see it through to the end? With games, these topics tend to be kept secret, but I'd bet a lot of you are interested in knowing. Since it ties into the channel's creation, I'll satisfy that curiosity and tell you about the production costs. Producing this channel cost yes, about 90 million yen. That's a lot. It didn't quite reach 100 million, but that's still a hefty sum. That number may not have the same impact outside of Japan due to the weak yen, but it's far more than I had initially expected. If the channel had taken more time to launch, it may have actually gone over 100 million yen. Here's how that total breaks down. Most of it went to video editing, as payment to hike, in other words. This is what it means to hire people. And it makes sense, since the constant video editing took the most time as well. In terms of other money spent, I paid about 220,000 yen in licensing fees for the press start video. Altogether, the free crossover episodes with the Retro Game Master cost about 1.5 million yen. They were kind enough to handle the filming, but I still paid for the video editing, translation, studio space, games, and more. If you divide the channel cost by the number of episodes, it comes out to almost 350,000 yen per episode. If you divide that by the total hits for the Japanese and English versions, a good few episodes ended up costing over 1 yen per view. I would like more people to watch, to be honest. Still, even if you had a sponsor investing 100 million yen, that still wouldn't be enough to make a channel like this. Not even close if you think about it. After all, the channel's cost doesn't include ideation, script writing, recording, supervision, or management. Things that were covered by me, personally, or Sora, rather. These things form the heart of the channel, and if you want to be persuasive, you need someone accomplished leading it. So outsourcing the massive amount of work involved would surely cause your production costs to skyrocket. Assuming such a person would even say yes. At the same time, the channel isn't monetized, meaning it brings in zero income. Even I think that's kind of silly. At the very least, Sora bore the double burden of both expenses and labor. In addition to the financial outlay, I also handled channel uploads amidst my already heavy workload, and I revealed all the insider expertise that helps put food on my table. Despite all this prep work and the challenge of managing this alongside my game project, it wouldn't be earning any money. It really was a silly decision. However, and I truly mean this, I consider this an investment towards a brighter future for games. Well, investments are made in hopes of later profit, so I guess this is closer to a donation or volunteer work. Speaking as a director for a second, it would be tough to pull together a team and create a modern game with just 100 million yen. The jury's still out for now, but for the money I put into it, I'd say the channel turned out well enough. The world is constantly seeing new game releases. Lots of people are doing their best out there. Rather than add one more title to that deluge, I thought this channel might give all games a little quality boost. And I hope from the bottom of my heart that I've contributed at least a bit of wind to the industry's sails. Data. Now I'd like to take the opportunity to share some data regarding the channel as of October 17th, 2024. Active time frame: 2 years and 2 months. Videos released: 260. Total video length: 19 hours, 13 minutes. Total views, cumulatively, over 80 million. Total viewing time, cumulatively, 498 years. Channel subscribers, cumulatively over 1 million. Viewership by region, predominantly Japan and the USA. Viewer age breakdown: the 25 to 34 demographic, followed by the 18 to 24 demographic, followed by the 35 to 44 demographic. Viewer devices: 49.8% iPhone, 31% computer, 10% tablet and TV. Categories and all the thumbnails. In closing, I'd like to share some thoughts from those involved in the channel's production. Congratulations on bringing Masahiro Sakurai on creating games across the finish line. We never dreamt we'd be met with an opportunity like this from Mr. Sakurai himself and are truly honored to have been a part of the production team. We hope the channel continues to provide viewers with plenty of enjoyment for a long time to come. Hike. It was an incredible honor for us to help bring Sakurai-san's extensive knowledge to a wider audience in localizing these videos. Working on this series for the past 2.5 years has been a highlight of our company's history, and we hope everyone who watched the English versions got as much enjoyment out of them as we did translating them. H4. From the start, I had no way of knowing how this would go. I just wanted to help make future games a tiny bit better and never expected anything in return. As of the time I'm filming this finale, I'm still in the middle of posting more videos. In other words, my schedule is just like how I described it earlier. It's hard to know how I'll feel once the channel actually comes to an end. But I hope I'll be able to look back and be certain it was all worth it. I'm at the age now that there's no telling when I might decide to step away from the game industry. And there's no guarantee I'll remain in good health either. With that in mind, I'm glad I jumped on this opportunity to leave behind my knowledge in a form other than just another game. Given how volatile a medium YouTube can be, I'm sure I'll stop showing up in your recommendations before too long. In any case, if you haven't subscribed yet, I truly appreciate you doing so and staying on board. For game developers, this is a handy guide you can access whenever you need it. For players, it's a way to further deepen your knowledge of games. And for professionals, it's a reference for workplace rules and philosophies. So I'd say there's a wide range of people who can draw from the channel. As I mentioned in my first episode, the purpose of this channel is to give viewers a little boost to their knowledge. All that to say, if nobody uses it, it might as well not exist. Only when viewers make use of this channel does it gain its meaning. That's its sole purpose. This will be the channel's final episode. I'm sure I could think of plenty more to discuss, but at present, I have no plans to continue. So please don't ask for more episodes on this topic or that topic. I've already given this my best. That said, now that I have this channel, it's always possible I could use it to talk about something else down the line. You never know what might happen, so I'm trying to stay flexible in how I approach it. I'll also be continuing with the category compilations, so feel free to give those a look if you're interested. You may just get something out of it. I hope that creators and players alike were able to deepen their understanding and can approach both games and work in a better manner than before. Thank you so much for your continued support. Bye for now. All clear.